Hi guys, Mrs. Clark again. Gonna try our second video. And this video is going to focus on finding the volume of a rectangular prism and then taking that same rectangular prism and flattening it out, looking at all the faces and finding the surface area of each of the faces. And then the total surface area of the object. So I sold this box from my nephew. He's all into dinosaurs. So I took this box, which I call it a box, but it is definitely the shape of a rectangular prism. Okay? We're going to focus on finding the length, the width, and the height of this rectangular prism. We're going to multiply them together to get the volume. So I've got my ruler here. I'm going to round the measurements to the nearest whole number. Okay? It's going to make it easier for you. You can do the same thing if you decide to do this activity on the weekly menu, and you'll see that I have something on there about this. So if I measure the longest side of this rectangular prism, it comes out to about 7.75 inches long. I'm going to round that to 8 inches. That's going to be the longest side. So 8. Now I'm going to measure the width. Okay, and the width is going to be this measurement of the rectangular prism. So again, I'm going to measure using my trusty ruler. And it is a little more than 4.5, so I'm going to round that to 5. Obviously, if I didn't round and I kept 7.75 and 5.65 perhaps times the height, I'm going to get more of an exact measurement for the volume. But for what we're doing right now, for you to get comfortable, I think this is okay to do. So the next thing I'm going to do is measure the height. Now remember, what makes this three-dimensional is the fact that you have height for this box. Okay? So the height is going to measure, if this was on the table and I was to measure from the table up to the top of the box, that's going to give me the measurement of the height. And when I measure this, I get a measure of a little more than 2.5 inches tall. So again, if it's more than 2.5, I'm rounding it to 3. Okay? So now when you're finding the volume, you need to multiply these numbers together. Okay? I like looking at these two numbers because I'm going to get 8 times 5, I'm going to get 40. And that's going to be easy to multiply times 3. And I get 120, and I measured in inches, by the way, inches cubed. So that is the volume of the rectangular prism. All right? Now, if I'm going to find the surface area of this rectangular prism, I need to measure all the faces. So I can literally take the box apart to do that, or I can start with it in this form right here. I need to know what the length and width is of this face right here. So I'm going to measure across. Again, I'm sticking with inches. I measure across. I already have this measurement somewhere. It's a little more than 4.5. So we took that as 5. I'm going to make this side 1. I'm going to call this 5 by. Now I have to measure, so I measured across. Now I have to measure this way, which is technically the length. Notice some of these numbers, we've heard them before. We've talked about them when we were finding the volume. But the length of this face ends up being more than 7.75, and we rounded that to 8. Okay? So, if this face, okay, or side of this rectangular prism, okay, is a 5 by 8. The other thing that's kind of cool about this is that you know it has a match. So this side of this rectangular prism is going to have the same dimensions. So side 1 and side 2, we're going to be talking about this, and we're saying that this is a 5 by 8 as well. 5 times 8 is 40. So we have two faces that have an area of 40 inches squared at this point. So now, let's go to this side. We'll call this side 3, and the match of it's going to be side 4. Okay? So if I measure this, and again, the numbers are going to sound familiar because they were part of the measurements that went into the volume. So this is a, let's see, it looks like the height that we said here was 3. So this is a 3 by, well, this is the length measurement, and we know the length measurement was 8. So this is a 3 by 8. And we have 2 of them. And 3 times 8 is 24. Okay? So the only faces that we haven't measured yet would be this one and this one. So, the height, if you recall, these numbers all sound familiar. The height we said before was 3. So I'm going to put a line over here. This is going to be a 3 by, I want you to take a second. We have a 5 by 8. We have a 3 by 8. We need a 3 by what? Well, we did a 3 by 8. We've done a 5 by 8. But what we haven't multiplied together would be the 3 by 5. And again, there's 2 matches to every face to make up the rectangular prism. We have the area of all the faces of this rectangular prism now. So you remember from working on the nightly homework sheets that we did some work with surface area. Once you find the area of each of the faces that make up the rectangular prism, you need to add these numbers all together now. So we've got 2 sides that have an area of 40, so that's a total of 80. We have 2 faces that have an area of 24. 24 plus 24 is 48. Mrs. Clark likes to subtotal things. So that gives me 128 right now. Now I have to add the 2 15s, and 15 plus 15 gives me 30. I get a surface area of this rectangular prism or oatmeal box that is equal to 158 inches squared, because for each of the faces that make up the rectangular prism, for each of the faces we're finding the area of them. That's only 2 dimensions at a time, so that's why this is squared and not cubed, where up here when we found the volume, it ended up being 3 dimensions that go into finding the volume. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you were refreshed about some of these skills, because I know we've done work with this before. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good night. Bye.